Hello and welcome back to the Discworld Lore series for our third episode on the magic users of Discworld. We've covered the witches and the wizards, so to wrap the subject up we will be covering two other major powers relating to the forces of magic on the disc. Sorcerers and the dungeon dimensions. Almost different sides of the same coin, and both most definitely threats to the disc at its very core. Similar but somewhat set apart from wizards are the sorcerers, spelled source as in the source of something, because they are the source of magic. It is well known on the disc and from our previous video that the 8th son of an 8th son will be born a wizard, and that wizards are generally discouraged from being in love, though it has to be said that wizards generally don't indulge themselves in love affairs, in any case. The reason for this might be that if a wizard were to ever have sons, all of them would be powerful wizards by birth, but the 8th son would be a sorcerer, a wizard squared. Wizards use the magic existing on the disc to perform their spells, but a sorcerer is the source of magic. There is nearly nothing he can't do, as the magic he uses he generates himself, making them one of the most powerful entities on the disc, even more powerful than gods. Considering the fact that the magic generated by a sorcerer is new and wild and has never been recycled before, used to perform other spells and fallen into natural background, this makes it far more powerful than the magic found nearly everywhere else on the disc and to be used, especially that found in old historical areas left over from the Mage Wars. This then is the basis for the rule that any wizard who wishes to indulge in affairs of the heart must give up wizardry. No one really wants to return to those days of tower building and vast magical warfare. A sorcerer did appear just once in recent history in the novel, titled appropriately Sorcery. Just what effect Coin, the 8th son of a renegade and vengeful wizard named Ipsilor the Red, has on the world can be read extensively in that novel. Suffice to say it is as enormous as it is cataclysmic. There are sorcerers who are more historically harmless, but nonetheless vindictive in their power. One sorcerer in particular is infamous for having cursed several merchants after receiving bad service from them, forcing them never to close, and instead they became the wandering shops plying their wares across all of reality, never settling on one world too long, but always being exactly where they needed to be when someone needed an artifact or trinket. In addition, the evil Emperor of Uberwald has been referred to as a sorcerer, but whether this is a historical fact or mere speculation has never been confirmed one way or another. Moving on, we will be heading somewhere that is, to put it simply, positively Lovecraftian. You see, one of the reasons that a sorcerer is such a threat to the world, quite apart from their own potential for destruction, is that they can be a draw to them and bring them into our world. The them we are referring to are the creatures of the dungeon dimensions. The dungeon dimensions are the great darkness, less than a shadow's width from reality. There is endless dry silver sand with nothing save the cold stars above, and it's populated by things that exist just enough to hate everything that has actual substance in reality. They are born of nightmares, and they are quintessential essence of nightmares made into pseudo-flesh. They are not demons, as they do not rely on belief to exist. In Discworld, a demon is just the opposite of a god, beings composed of the element deitium who are powered by the belief of followers. The creatures of the dimensions are, in a way, all-powerful and yet utterly powerless. Randomized abominations of flesh, scale, bone and muscle, so outside the realms of cohesion that even the pretty ones look like cross between an angry octopus and an angrier bicycle that just fell down a non-Euclidean staircase into the God of Evolution's spare parts drawer, or possibly just his reject bin. Imagine something trying to take the form of every form of life at once in a desperate attempt to be it. No real understanding, just animal want and desire. Not even animal, in fact. Less than animal. Just a driving want and a need and a fear and a loathing and a hate and a lust for everything in one big messed up package. Now fill an entire plane of existence with them. They crave life in a stable reality, so they try to break through into more ordinary dimensions such as the Discworld, which, given what we've already said about it, says a lot about Discworld that that's a more stable and appealing reality. Magic weakens the boundaries between worlds, so the creatures of the dungeon dimensions gather where there is a large amount of magic, waiting for the opportunity to break through. There is also the times when they manage to come through into the mind of a wizard who has left himself open to them, as happened to the unfortunate wizard Trumon, whose true mind was caught as little more than a witness as his body was puppeted and ultimately warped into one of the creatures, an incoherent, writhing mass of tentacles, where his final human sentence was a desperate plea for death. For all that Truman was an asshole, there is no level of karmic reasoning that can call such a thing that happened to him a deserved fate. And for whatever reason, these creatures have an affinity for the number of magic. 8. Actually better not risk it. The number that is 4 plus 4, or 7 plus 1, you get me. So wizards try not to say that number if they can possibly avoid it, just to keep the creature's attention away from them. The creatures cuddle around our world for light and shape, craving only to exist, as we've said. But they could no more survive in our world than a wet paper towel in a shredding machine. It doesn't stop them trying, though, and it doesn't stop them wishing. If they ever do break through, the effect is going to be roughly like if you were to take a candle and put it on the beach right in front of a tsunami. They are good at waiting, though, because, to be honest, they've got literally nothing else to do in their dimension. There is nothing except to crave and hate. Magic doesn't work when fighting the things, needless to say, as they feed on magic. But there are 2 methods that have been shown to work. Not using magic, which is to say actively refusing to use it in their presence, which is rather frustrating to them to say the least, and good old-fashioned fire and steel with no magical enchantments whatsoever. When in the world that we've seen, they must obey our rules, which means they generally don't last very long because they're not biologically viable, what with having far too many legs and all those organs in the wrong place, and they also can bleed. And as Mustrum Ridcully was fond to tell us, if it bleeds, we can kill it, although it might take a long time. If they take on other forms, they seem to have trouble adjusting to the idea of having less legs, or arms, or legs, or anything at all, really, as they're very much incoherent creatures. Those few who manage to break through into our home will try to home in on sources of magic, such as trying to feed on them and stay corporeal. There is one other way they can stay in our universe, of course. It has been suggested that some very terrible gods on the disc are not ordinary demons that we spoke about before, who manage to acquire believers in the normal way, but creatures of the dungeon dimensions who manage to attach themselves to the world long enough to attract believers themselves, letting them tap enough into the natural background magic through that belief, just enough to cling onto the world like a virus does inside a body. The most infamous is the Sender of 8, Bel Shamharoth, whose temple in Skund was a nexus for the magical power of the number 8, and was keeping that area of the world back in time, in the time of legends and folklore, just out of time itself being too damn afraid to go near the place. And with that, I think we've profitably covered everything we can on magic, although there are several smaller subjects on the area that I'll be covering in due time. As for now, though, thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed our little series, and we hope to continue by bringing you more stories of Terry Pratchett's wonderful Discworld. Until then, I'll see you later.